Sometimes, heartbreak doesn't start with shouting or betrayal. It begins with silence. A wife who stops texting. A husband who starts noticing. And in that silence, something inside Marcus broke quietly until he decided to rebuild his life from the ground up. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening in Portland. The kind of day that feels like every other until something tiny shifts and everything begins to unravel. Marcus came home from his construction job, boots dusty, shoulders heavy, holding takeout in one hand and the faint hope of a quiet night in the other. The smell of fried rice and sesame oil filled the small kitchen as he placed the bag on the counter. Jennifer was at the bathroom mirror, brushing her hair. Her hands trembled slightly, just enough for him to notice. She smiled quickly, but it didn't reach her eyes. When Marcus suggested their usual movie night, she hesitated, her voice light but off balance. "The girls are meeting for coffee," she said, reaching for her purse. The excuse floated between them, fragile and thin. Marcus looked at her outfit, dark jeans, a soft blouse, and pointed-toe leather shoes. Not the kind of thing one wears for a casual coffee. He said nothing, just nodded. "All right, have fun," he murmured. She promised to text when she was heading home, but the hours stretched long. 10 p.m. came, then 11. By midnight, the only sound was the soft rattle of Marcus organizing tools in the garage, his way of calming the noise in his head. When Jennifer's car finally pulled up, relief flickered and vanished almost instantly. Their conversation that night was short and sharp. He asked why she hadn't texted. She accused him of being controlling. He said it wasn't control, it was courtesy. She rolled her eyes and called him ridiculous. It was the first time she'd used that tone, half contempt, half exhaustion, and Marcus felt something invisible close inside him. That night, they slept on opposite sides of the bed, backs turned, miles apart in the same room. The following days were quieter than usual. Word became shorter, smiles forced, dinners eaten in silence. Jennifer stayed on her phone more, face half lit by blue light, fingers moving fast. Marcus didn't check. He didn't snoop. He just watched and wondered when it had become normal to feel like a stranger in your own home. He tried to fix it the only way he knew how, through space and patience. He shifted his gym schedule to evenings, gave her room to breathe, stopped reaching out physically. He thought maybe if he gave her enough space, she'd come back into it, but space only widened the distance. On Friday, their neighbor Daniel hosted a cookout. Everyone was there, laughing, drinking, the smell of barbecue thick in the air. Jennifer was glued to her phone, smiling at messages that clearly weren't group chats. Her friend Lisa arrived late, loud and dramatic, hugging Jennifer with an exaggerated grin and barely acknowledging Marcus. He noticed, but said nothing. When the conversation turned to relationships and someone joked about married people rules, Marcus smiled lightly and said, "We don't have many rules, just respect and communication." Jennifer's expression changed. "Oh, please, Marcus," she said, laughing a little too loud. "You mean your rule about texting every 5 minutes?" The air shifted. People went quiet. Lisa looked away, pretending not to notice. Marcus didn't argue. He just looked at Jennifer, smiled gently, and said, "Basic courtesy isn't control." That moment stayed with him, the way she seemed embarrassed by decency. The weekend came with an unexpected sweetness. Jennifer apologized, said the week had been rough. She blamed work, her mother's health, and her own stress. She planned dinner downtown, candlelight flickering across her face, and even insisted on paying the bill. They walked home arm in arm, like old times. On Sunday, she baked his favorite brownies. The house smelled of sugar and cocoa, and for a few hours, Marcus allowed himself to believe the storm had passed. But inside, something in him had changed. He was no longer reaching for her. He was watching. Monday evening, while they watched TV in silence, Jennifer's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Marcus didn't mean to look, but the message glowed right in front of him. It read, "Hey, same spot as last time. Want to see you." For a long second, he didn't move. Jennifer's hand darted forward too quickly, grabbing the phone as if it were a live grenade. Her voice came out shaky. "It's just Tom," she said. "He's going through a divorce. Needed some advice." Marcus nodded slowly. At midnight, she blinked, anger rising to cover panic. You're making this into something it's not. He's just a friend. I can't even help someone now. She grabbed her keys and announced she was meeting Lisa to clear her head. The door slammed behind her before Marcus could respond. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark, listening to the soft of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the faint echo of his own heartbeat. He realized that love isn't destroyed by betrayal. It's worn down by patterns, by disrespect disguised as independence. By dawn, his decision was clear. He wasn't going to argue, accuse, or beg. He was going to act. Marcus was a builder by trade. He understood structure, foundation, and what happens when cracks go unsealed. The next morning, he went to the bank. He moved the savings he'd worked years for into a new account under his own name. He updated his cards, filed his papers, and checked the mortgage. His hand didn't shake. Not once. At lunch, he sat in his truck outside the county office, staring at the divorce forms. The woman at the counter asked if he was sure. Yes, he said simply. I'm sure. He didn't tell Jennifer. Not yet. He came home that evening to find the house quiet, the smell of roasted chicken in the oven. Jennifer had set the table with candles, wearing a soft gray sweater he once told her he loved. She smiled nervously. Can we just start over? She asked. Marcus sat across from her, calm, steady. Starting over requires honesty, he said, not performance. Her eyes flickered with confusion, then fear. She tried to laugh it off, tried to switch back to charm, but he wasn't playing along. He had reached that rare point of peace, the kind that comes when your heart finally stops fighting for what doesn't want to stay. They ate in silence. When dinner was done, he thanked her for cooking, stood up, and went to his workshop. She didn't follow him. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Maybe she didn't care enough to try. That night, Marcus lay awake again, but this time there was no turmoil, just clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally understand that love, without respect, is just a polite version of suffering. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he'd cry or break or feel empty. All he knew was that something had ended quietly that night. Not with shouting, not with betrayal, but with acceptance. And in that acceptance, Marcus found something stronger than love. He found himself. The next night came a quiet rain and a heaviness that Marcus couldn't quite name. He sat in his truck outside the house, headlights off, listening to the sound of drops hitting the windshield. When he finally went inside, the house smelled faintly of her perfume, but Jennifer wasn't home. Hours passed. 11 o'clock. Midnight. Her car was still gone. He called once, no answer. He called again, declined. At 1 a.m, his phone buzzed a message. I'll call when I'm free. Don't worry. He stared at the screen for a long while before typing back. Don't need the call. Stay with him. House is closed to you tonight. He set the phone face down and turned off the lights. There were no tears, no broken plates, no shouting into the void. Just a man sitting in silence, realizing that love shouldn't require detective work. Marcus woke up early, the air crisp with a kind of finality. He brewed coffee, strong and bitter, and started packing her things. Not out of rage, but order. The same precision he used at construction sites now guided his hands at home. One folded shirt after another. Toiletries in zip bags. The faint scent of her hair products mixing with dust and quiet resolve. He placed the suitcases by the front door, divorce documents neatly on top. Then he changed the locks. When Jennifer's car pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later, Marcus was standing in the living room, arms crossed, calm and still. She tried the door. It didn't open. The sound of her keys clinking against metal echoed through the hallway. Then came the knock. Marcus, she shouted, voice sharp with disbelief. What are you doing? Open the door. He did, slowly. The moment their eyes met, she exploded. You've lost your mind. You're paranoid, you're controlling, you're cruel. He said nothing at first, just watched her face twist between anger and fear. When she tried to push past him, he gently stepped in front of the doorway. This isn't a game anymore, Jen, he said softly. I asked for respect. I got stories. I didn't do anything, she snapped. You're punishing me for helping a friend. Marcus looked down at the papers. You said you wanted freedom. I'm giving it to you. She froze. You filed? He nodded. Yesterday. Tears welled up in her eyes, but even those felt rehearsed. It wasn't physical, Marcus. You're throwing everything away over nothing. He met her gaze. I didn't ask if it was physical. I just wanted honesty. You couldn't even give me that. Jennifer tried to pivot, tried to soften. Please, can we just talk? No phones, no yelling, just 5 minutes. He shook his head gently. You've already spent those minutes elsewhere. Her face hardened. You'll regret this. Maybe, he said quietly, but at least I'll regret it in peace. He stepped back, held the door open, and pointed to the suitcases. It's all there. The papers explain everything. It's fair. I made sure of that. Jennifer hesitated, eyes scanning his expression for some sign of weakness. A door she could still slip through. There was none. She picked up the bags with trembling hands, glared at him through glassy eyes, and whispered, You'll miss me. Marcus didn't answer. He simply closed the door. For a long time, he stood in the living room, listening to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. It wasn't triumph he felt. It was silence. Heavy, clean, almost sacred. The next few days were chaos. Unknown numbers called it out hours. Messages came from Lisa, from Jennifer's mother, from friends who suddenly cared about getting both sides. Some of them accused him of being cold. Others tried to mediate. Marcus didn't fight back. He didn't defend himself. His replies were short, polite, firm. I'm fine. It's handled. Thank you. Lisa showed up at his fence one evening, full of fire. You're destroying her, she shouted. She's heartbroken. You could at least talk to her. Marcus just shook his head. I did. For years. You all just weren't listening. He turned away and went back inside. The door closed softly, but with meaning. The divorce process unfolded exactly as he planned. The house was legally his from before the marriage. His construction tools belonged to his company. His savings, moved early, were safe. Jennifer contested some furniture, claimed sentimental items. But Marcus had documentation for everything. He wasn't vengeful, just thorough. He answered every message from his lawyer with precision. He didn't miss deadlines. He didn't show up to court angry. He showed up ready. One afternoon, after filing another set of documents, he stopped by his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen's porch. She was trimming her rose bushes, tiny hands steady despite her age. She looked up, saw the exhaustion in his eyes, and said, Peace will come. Not first, but it will. Marcus smiled faintly. I'll wait for it. You don't wait, she said, tapping his arm. You make room for it. Her words lingered. That night, Marcus slept better than he had in months. Weeks passed. The calls stopped. The gossip faded. The silence became less of a punishment and more of a gift. He started rediscovering himself in small ways. Morning jogs, rebuilding old furniture, fixing his father's old watch. Things he used to love before life got too loud. He stopped cooking for two. The fridge looked emptier, but his heart felt lighter. One Saturday, his friend Pete convinced him to join trivia night at a local bowling alley. Marcus went reluctantly, more out of boredom than excitement. But that's where he met Sarah. She wasn't loud or flashy or trying to impress anyone. She had a laugh that sounded like honesty, and when she disagreed with one of his answers, she smiled and said, You're confident but wrong. He laughed for real that night, the kind of laugh that doesn't hide anything. They started talking more after that. Slow, simple, no rush. She didn't ask about his past right away. She didn't treat him like a project to fix. She just existed beside him, comfortably, quietly. Jennifer, meanwhile, hadn't fully disappeared. She left notes in his mailbox, handwritten messages about regret and misunderstanding. Sometimes she called from new numbers, leaving voicemails that swung from apologies to anger. Marcus never called back. He didn't hate her. He just didn't owe her the energy anymore. Once, she cornered him in a grocery store parking lot, demanding to know how he could move on so easily. Marcus looked at her, calm as ever, and said, "I didn't move on easily. I just stopped staying stuck." When the divorce was finalized, there was no champagne, no celebration, just a quiet drive home after work. The same roads, the same sky, but everything felt wider. The air smelled different, fresher somehow. That evening, he sat in his workshop, the hum of the radio low in the background. He picked up a small grease-stained index card and wrote something simple. "Respect is the first bill due. When it's not paid, you cut the service." He slipped the card into his toolbox and smiled. Not a smile of victory, but one of understanding. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still lonely nights, memories that lingered like dust. But there was peace, and peace, he realized, was worth more than promises. He went back to work, to his projects, to his gym, to the slow rhythm of ordinary days. Sometimes he thought of Jennifer, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She was part of his story, not his destination. Marcus didn't win or lose. He simply stopped renting his peace to someone who couldn't afford honesty. And in that quiet truth, he rebuilt not just his home, but himself. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. It doesn't throw things or scream into the night. Sometimes strength is just locking the door, taking a breath, and choosing yourself.